All right, good. It is 7 o'clock. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Hanson Finance Committee meeting of February 23rd. It's good to see everyone tonight. I appreciate all of you who could join us. We've got a relatively light agenda tonight, but we want to start making our way through our individual departmental meetings with the budget as presented. So everything you'll be hearing tonight will be with the budget as it is presented, and we will go from there depending on what edits have to be made later in the season. So with that, can I have a motion to open?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Dugan. Seconded by Mrs. Whitman. All those in favor, we will do a roll call vote. Mr. Dugan?
Aye.
Mr. McCormick?
Aye.
Mrs. Whitman?
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan? Aye. We are open 4-0. Thank you. All right, tonight with us, I told them we'd make it quick and painless as it usually is. We are joined by Chief Thompson of the Hanson Fire Department. So we always welcome the chief to our yearly brief or so. So Chief Thompson, thank you for coming. We've all had a chance to sort of take a look at your budget, but we wanted to hear from you in your words, where you see yourself this budget season and going forward, and any major issues or concerns you see. So I will turn the floor over to you, and then we'll have a brief Q&A afterward.
Awesome. Thank you. I hope everybody's doing good tonight. Staying healthy. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to sit here and go through a budget as presented, knowing what we are possibly facing down the road. So I will go through as presented, and then I'm sure that you'll have some questions for me. Basically, my budget is, as usual, it's just straightforward. However, we've incurred some costs this year that were pretty much unprecedented. I have 4 people out right now. We have a deployment, a maternity leave, and 2 injuries, 1 on the job, 1 off. So that's something that, 4 months ago, I never thought would happen. And some of that will carry over into next year. The deployment will be for 6 months. The medical leave could be about 12 weeks. And the on-the-job injury, which wasn't any coverage for shifts, was not included in this budget request because we don't know if that individual will be back or he will be back. We'll have an idea of that probably in about 3 to 4 weeks. So the biggest issue I see for us, no matter what happens, would be in overtime, the increase. Some of the things that COVID affected were our members utilizing vacation time last year. So, I mean, it was good because we returned money in overtime, right around 70,000 that we didn't use, but contractually they're allowed to carry over up to 10 days. And a lot of people did that. And in preparing the budget, I have to use an average of what I think that they might use next year. So that number for each employee actually went up a little bit just because of the numbers that they had, accumulated and being able to carry over. It does include a 2% increase that we were told to put in by the town administrator for salaries. That's just, it's in there. And basic, go ahead, somebody has to say something? No, okay. Yeah, and basically, just a little background where our calls continue to be steady, anywhere between 1,800 to 2,000 calls a year. And we're still experiencing the multiple calls simultaneously, like 15% of the time. So, it took a long time for us to build to where we are right now to get the 4 people around the clock, because it's the safest for us. And I do believe that our service that we provide is adequate. So obviously I don't believe that any reduction to not be able to provide that staffing is going to be appropriate. However, moving forward, we're going to have to do whatever we need to do. So on the capital side, just before I get to my expenses, we did put in to do a feasibility study. And then pretty much after that, our capital plan is flat, I think, for the next year. And then an ambulance after that. So our capital plan, we were able to obtain a lot of things, capital items that through going to the regional dispatch center, we got brand new laptops for our engines. We got a brand new phone system for the station. a bunch of things that we were able to get through them, through their development grant, which is huge. Things we probably wouldn't have been able to buy otherwise, or at least not as soon. Our expense line, pretty much, it's, again, like all our departments in town, we're pretty lean. Everything is pretty much where we're at. Some of the things are difficult to predict, like the vacation buyback and the sick buyback. You put that amount in there, and I have to have that amount in there for sick time buyback every year, and they buy it back the first week of the new fiscal year, and then whatever's left over, obviously, it's a bottom line budget, can be used for overtime. But it's difficult for me to predict. Some people one year might want to buy back the money, other years they might want to build up their time. The only thing is, we used to have a fire and equipment outlay line that we used to like purchase hose and do some major things at the station. That we're in pretty decent shape, so that line is down to zero. But other than that, everything that's in here is explained in that narrative. So is there anything specifically or any questions, anything you'd like me to hit on?
Yeah, I'll start.
Sure.
I just, for clarity's sake, in looking at the general salaries and wages. So from 20 to 21, it's about a $15,000 difference, but it's from 21 to the proposed budget is about a $60,000 difference. Is that a case of the deputy chief and another lieutenant at higher rates coming into play, or am I just not seeing that right?
So they all got an increase in this. So in this past January, so that might not be included. Is that included in what you're looking at for 20? You know what I mean? So they just got it.
Your number for 20 for just general salaries, not overtime or additional gross or those other
Right.
factors. Was call it $1,108,000.
Yep.
And for 21, it's $1,122,000. So about a $15,000 difference, round figures. The proposed budget is $1,183,000, which is about a $60,000 increase. So going, from 15 one year to 60 the next.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to do is just rationalize where it is. I mean, overall, Jerry, maybe I'm speaking for everybody, maybe I'm just speaking for myself. As you said, the budget overall is what it is and fairly lean, and generally I don't have a lot of things. I'm just trying to understand some of the bits and pieces of the moving parts.
Right. So I would say that the 2% increase that was in here adds to that. And we've had, I would say, several people. So they were given in their contract a while ago a step raise for 20 and 25 years. So we've had 3 or 4 individuals that have been at top step for a while, reach that mark. So that's some additional right there on top of just some of our younger members getting to max.
My only other follow-up question in regards to overall salaries is more in equipment and personnel. We've talked years past about gear having expiration dates, and if I've got a new guy coming on, it's $7,000 or $8,000 worth of equipment. Where are we in terms of looking at any of those expenses? Are any of those going to be offsetting some other? I guess the question I'm going with is, are there younger guys where some of those costs are going to be a blip this year and then will flatten out? Or do we think things will be that we probably had the brunt of some of those new people coming on in the last year or 2 fiscal years?
Now, you looking at the, say, the line in the regular budget says protective clothing, or in the capital item?
No, I actually wasn't looking at a specific line item. Just as I was thinking about we just mentioned that there were some newer people coming on, that we've had a year where some of the equipment cost had, and I don't know if we did it in a reserve fund or whether it was in the budget, and it was either old equipment needed to be replaced because it was past the expiration date or coming up on it, or you were bringing on 3 new people and they all had to get new gear at $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 a pop. So I guess the more of a general question, not in
Yep.
specific numbers of, are there anything that we're looking at, this year that might be in that, like academy, new equipment, people coming on board?
No, we should be good. I mean, obviously, my budget should be able to cover one or two people if we had to replace them, but no significant cost. Our
Okay.
gear is not up to be replaced completely until right around fiscal year 2025. So there's nothing big like that. Obviously, one of our biggest lines in our expense line is our equipment repair and maintenance, and our newer vehicles are basically cutting down on things like that. We haven't had any issues in the tower truck until about a month ago when it caught on fire. However, it's being fixed and that's under insurance. So, we just have to eat that $1,000 deductible. But to answer your question, no, I don't foresee any big expenses in those areas.
Last question for me, just a kind of a general one, is you've brightened our day every once in a while with saying we've applied for this grant. We're hoping maybe anything that's might be in the potential wish list, but we can't count on it today.
Well, I don't know if you're aware, we did get the air packs. We did get the self-contained breathing apparatus for $200,000.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
we got that. So basically our capital plan, we put in for a feasibility and space need study for the fire department. And if you can, you guys have a copy of my plan, I can send it to you. Just the building's 40 years old. We maintain it very well. However, I think the town needs to look towards the future. And then next year I have zero for my capital plan, which is unheard of, right, for the fire department. And then the next year is an ambulance, but that's with the ambulance funding. So, I mean, we're really in good shape in that aspect. So.
Well, as always, Jerry, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we all understand the elephant in the room, right? I mean, if
Right.
that didn't happen, we're in really good shape, and I'm concerned, and it's not something that myself and my deputy don't think about and try to figure out every day. You know what I mean?
No, I hear you loud and clear on that. And, it's if it happens, great. If it doesn't, then where are we? And,
Yeah.
Based on your initial comments, it's not something that is not being planned for. And I guess that's, where we come down to with you and just about every other department.
Yeah, I agree.
So Chief, I have a couple questions here real quick.
Sure.
With this being a year that we do not have to spend on capital now, is that something that just a pleasant coincidence, or was this something that you're able to push from this year to next year? I mean, I know we'd always like to pull stuff in, but this is the one bright spot in the budget process, is that we don't have to buy a fire engine this year, or plan to buy one.
I think that I'll say this. I think that my persistence paid off. And that we're in good shape equipment wise. And on top of that, the grants, I mean, we were very fortunate to get that brush truck 2 years ago. We also got, we were looking for some money for some portable radios. We were able to get an EOPS grant, Executive Office of Public Safety grant. The air packs was huge. I mean, we tried like 7 times. We finally got them. So it puts us in a really good place equipment wise. The only thing that we really have other than that study would be an ambulance in fiscal year 2024. And quite honestly, if we had to, we could push that off. I'd rather not. I've always thought it's good to buy them and have at least one in under warranty at all times, but we could push that off if we had to.
Well, especially since we've gotten to such a, you've done such a great job of getting us to a place where the town it's not all hitting at once. I feel like we've got a good capital plan. I don't want to lose the steam we have on this. I mean, it goes for all the other departments where there was a time where we were only doing one at capital project, but now we've got them on a good cycle. I feel that going forward, it's sustainable. So, okay, thank you. That answers my question. The only other question I had was, you said what, 1,800 to 2,000 calls? Is that's pretty standard, or did you see any sort of increase because of COVID?
No, I would say so. So it's tough to gauge us with other towns. Like, you get a town like Whitman that's small enough, but they're probably doing around 3,200 calls a year. The only thing that we're really close to is Halifax, but they did about 1,600 this year. We did see it slow down. 2 years ago, we saw our most at over 2,000. So it's pretty much about average. Right around 2015 is where we saw our bump from like a 15, 16, 100 up to, the 18 to 2,000 calls. And then obviously over the last 3 years, we pushed to maintain those 4 people around the clock, which I said, in my opinion, is adequate. Quite honestly, I don't want to keep bringing it up, but I understand the situation we're in, and looking at everything and looking at the building that's going on in town and some of the buildings that they're putting in. I believe, I don't want to say exactly, it's about 150 to 200 more living units that are going to be put into town over the next few years. And that's taxing to our department. My plan, all honesty, was to come in next year, in fiscal year 23, and try to get an additional firefighter for each shift. Now, there's different ways we could do that by applying for federal grants and things like that would pay for them for the first 3 years. But I mean, now we're looking at something totally different. But in my opinion, I do believe that if we keep adding units, then we need to look at the impact that it does make on our departments.
Right. So I guess going with that question is, for your current manning, you believe we can handle the call load that we have with the manning you have? I mean, obviously we'd always like to bring more people on, but
Yep.
with the manning you have now, if we could say, hey, we need to keep, I don't know the total number of firefighters you have, but if we need to keep this total amount of firefighters going forward to adequately handle the calls we have. I mean,
Right,
because
so-
go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm listening. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I remember, when a few years ago, I guess I've been doing this for longer than I remember, but we were running lower man shift. There was a lot more. I remember you saying you had to do a lot more call firefighters, what's the other, mutual aid. There was a lot. It seemed to be there was a lot more that we had to cover. We had to bring guys in either as a call firefighter to cover the station while the team was out on a call, or we had to we were using a lot of mutual aid. So I guess my question is, this is, I don't want to say the bare minimum manning you have, but is the manning you have right now adequate for the current position in the town? And I know obviously with the growth, because the growth that we're looking at, it would require more.
Yeah. No, I would say that it is adequate. The biggest thing is we need to maintain that. So prior, 3-4 years ago, we had 4 people on duty. If somebody took a vacation, we would drop down to 3 people, and we've worked our way up to, and obviously we did it in small steps. We maintain those 4 people for initial calls. So keeping the amount of people in the way that we staff by maintaining that number, yes, is adequate.
Right. And I mean, that doesn't account for, perhaps a firefighter who's on your payroll now who has another opportunity in another town to go somewhere else. So that doesn't even account the kind of losses that could come just via the natural process. So, okay. Thank you, Chief.
Well, just if I can, just one of the things
please.
I'll say that is a huge concern is that, depending on what happens in our fiscal situation as a town, if people start leaving, or if people unfortunately get laid off, and then the people in town decide that that was not the right decision and that they want to hire the people back, those people are gone. We've invested money in these people and we've trained them. So once they leave, or if they go somewhere else, you have to hire and train somebody else. So it's kind of more of a cost down the road. So that it is a concern.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely, you're right. We've all, as Mike mentioned earlier, outfitting a brand new firefighter with gear, and it's an expense on the town. So, okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Mr. McCormick or Mrs. Werdeman, any questions for the chief?
I am good, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm good. Knowing what he's going through, you did a good job, Chief. I was able
Chief
to follow it.
Chief to chief.
I got nothing. You have the same problems where I am, so great presentation. Worked us right through everything we needed to get through, so I'm good with it.
Yeah, it all makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. And as you guys know, if you need any more information, any questions, please feel free to reach out to me.
All right, Chief, thank you. Great presentation as always. We appreciate your time. And I kept it under 20 minutes, just like I said.
That's fine. It doesn't matter. I talk all night, Kevin. You know that.
I know that. So, all right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks,
too.
good night.
All right, so that is I'll say check the box for the fire department budget for the year. You know, I don't think there were any major outliers. It seemed pretty standard, and I was just bringing it up because it seems like the perfect coincidence that this is the first year we haven't had to make some capital investment in the fire department for, you know, that grant for the air packs is huge. Because that would have been a capital outlay, or so. Okay, so we'll have to keep an eye on this. Obviously, these budgets are, I'll call that as is budgets. We don't know where it's going to move or what's going to happen, so we're going to have to just keep this rolling going forward. My recommendation actually to the town administrator and to the town accountant is going to be, the closer we get, we're going to have to prepare, you know, almost a couple different budgets to go forward to see where we can, depending on what our final deficit number is, you know, the possible outcomes we have to be prepared for. So hopefully we'll have that the closer we get. But I want to keep doing these reviews. I know, you know, some of the departments are saying, well, we don't know what the budget is, but I want them to do an as-is budget review so that we can ask the questions about where are they spending capital? What are their personnel requirements? So I'm going to keep this march on. I'm going to try and get the other, you know, any department who wants an opportunity to come, just like we would normally when we were sitting down in person. So I'll probably try and look at scheduling the police chief well, they call him the highway superintendent now. I can't remember, superintendent or director. Well, whoever's running that
Highway.
Yeah.
highway next week or the week after. So that is that. Any final comments or
Actually, to be
questions?
fair on highway is, do we even know who that is? Was this a case of the person that was there is not there anymore, and weren't they trying to get the interim guy back? Is any of
Yeah,
that?
you know, to be honest, that could be my fault. I don't even know who it is. I know the gentleman who was running the department last town meeting is no longer there. I don't know who is acting or interim or where they are in the hiring process. So I will look for more information on that. So any final questions, comments, concerns on the fire department budget?
No, I mean, it's my 2 cents on it is, if our resident expert was okay with it, I guess I should be as well.
That's true. We always get the, you know,
Yeah,
we've got you know, Mr. McCormick here to make sure that everything is on the, explain
sounds,
any terms that don't make sense to us.
I'll be
Yeah.
doing this in 2 weeks in the same format, so.
yeah,
So it was a good run through, practice run through.
Some pointers. Yeah, he did a fabulous job. It's like you said, it's pretty standard. It doesn't look like any outliers in it. You just go down the list, and it pretty much is what it is. Like you said, good thing we don't have any capital expenditures or large costs that we need to do, because he got some grants and stuff. So it's pretty much through COVID, just maintaining proper staff so that you can handle the calls. And his run
Yeah.
volume is pretty consistent from where they've been. I don't think it went up or down that much. We're in the same boat. You know, our run volume was like 64 runs less this year than we did last year. So
Yeah, it was kind of interesting to see how the run volumes were the same, relatively the same, you know, despite being in the pandemic scenario. I'm sure there are people who are maybe not calling the fire department as much as they may have in the past. And
yep. It started out that way, and honestly, we started out, you know, with more fire runs than EMS runs until about July, and then we picked back up with our regular EMS runs. So
right.
We didn't see that big of a drop.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right, moving on to the next item in the agenda. I had sent out a copy of the solicitation for the Whitman Hanson Regional School District deregionalization study. I sent out the full proposal. This was the proposal that was, I didn't send out the other, there were two proposals that were submitted. This one, there was another one. It was decided by the selectmen that this was the proposal they accepted. I will tell you that the dollar value on this one was just shy of $20,000. The other proposal had an estimated expense of 50,000 plus, because it was more of an open-ended proposal where it was I don't want to say billable hours, but there were a certain amount of follow-on hours that had to proceed. And so after review, the selectmen did ask for my input on this, and this was the one I recommended. This was the references in here were what we used as part of the deregionalization committee to decide what we wanted. So we actually looked at several of the proposals submitted, and the TMS was one we settled on. So it gives the full scope of work that's outlined in there. I don't know if everyone had a chance to just briefly review that, or what any thoughts or comments or questions or concerns on that.
Kevin, I guess I'd be honest, it was 52 some odd pages, and I scrolled it from 50,000 feet. So, my fault if I'm asking a question that the details were in there, but where one was 50,000, this is 19.5. Is this a case of getting what you're paying for, or is this a case of we would be back to the trough of we find that, we really needed an additional X, Y, or Z, and to do that's going to be another $8,000-$10,000 on top of this.
Sure.
So
No.
use an analogy. This is like the taking the trees down over by Camp Kawani. Is oh, we need to now do this, and now we need to take the stumps out. And why couldn't we have gotten this all in one fell swoop?
No, so that's a great question. And I will say I sat on the deregionalization committee, and both proposals encompassed everything that we wanted them to. This proposal was more about providing a report, a summary of findings, very detailed. I mean, when you do have the time, it's 50 pages, because what they did is you can see they included an example of one they did for East Brookfield. So a lot of the pages in between, Mike, are what are the information that they're going to generate, the information that we as a committee determined that we would never be able to get, or in our civilian capacity, we wouldn't be able to get it. Both proposals provide exactly the amount of data we as a town need to make a decision. In my opinion, the amount of information that we need to make a decision regarding, going forward with deregionalization, our options. This proposal is all encompassing. The other one had a lot. It provided a proposal, a conclusion, but it left a lot of open-ended for future consultancy should we go forward. This, in my estimate, was here's the work we're going to do. The amount of work was, I will say, very similar, very data driven, with conclusions, with options, outlining the different scenarios that are possible. But this is sort of going to get us ready. The time it's going to take, it probably won't be ready till an October special town meeting. But for them to come to town meeting with this proposal, this however many pages, and hand it to the town, the citizens, and say, here's all the data you need to make an informed decisions. Here are the X, Y, and Z possibilities, and here's what will need to happen if we decide those courses of action. So this is it's very thorough. They're both very thorough. There is no concern of mine about, this wasn't the cheap brief one, because that's what I didn't want to happen. I didn't want to that was part of the reason we as a deregionalization committee decided that this was beyond our scope, was that, I think that what we'll do is we'll look at the report when it's done. We will make recommendations as a committee, but I wanted something, the amount of data in here, Mike, is something that with my, with all the people on the committee's full-time job, this is their full-time job, the people who do this. So, I think you're going to see it's a lot of information, and it will answer every question. That was what we wanted, was what are the steps going forward? So if deregionalization is a possibility, how much is it going to cost? What's the next step? What vote needs to happen? So that will all be laid out, and it'll be done by professionals who will be able to answer for it and say, it's not us. There's no agenda. This is just pure data-driven logic.
Yeah, so as this for an analogy between the two, in both scenarios, you were going to get a playbook of what to do with this. The other one would try to upsell you the coaching staff to go with it.
Right. There were extra amenities in the other proposal that, maybe weren't necessarily, because we don't know what's going to happen. This may be presented in October, and they need to give the town 6 months to decide, or however long, but this is something we'll now have. And it can inform our decisions without I hate to say, you'll never take the emotion out of it, but it will, this is a data-driven answer to the problem, to say, hey, you want to deregionalize, here's what it is, here's what happens, here's the cost, here's the procedure. Even when we went with the remote town meeting, and, we were all playing by a new playbook with the school and the different, how it's going to be funded, but this will be the answer going forward for that, to either, start down the path of deregionalization, or close it for good. Or close.
20,000 on this. Was this a knee-jerk reaction to that town meeting, or is this something that has some wheels still on it?
So there was a big, after town meeting, there was a certain percentage of the citizenry who felt that we needed to explore the path to deregionalization. They were unhappy with the results of town meeting, good, bad, or otherwise. They believed that Whitman was not a partner in the game going forward. So they wanted to explore the deregionalization possibilities. Not that they were pushing for it, but people were looking for what happens next. So the selectmen decided to form the deregionalization committee. It was myself, Selectman Hickey, and then three members of the citizens of Hanson at large. We met 4 or 5 times, and the more we started to get into it, to be honest, Ken, it was, the amount of work needed was well beyond the scope of a part-time town committee. And that's where we decided we needed a professional opinion, because we were picking some of the data, but as we started to review it, you could see there were gaps or holes. We were going to the state trying to get the answers, but it's not as effective as someone who can devote their full-time job to that. So, and they've done this before. They have contacts at the state. They've done it many times. And so that was where we decided, after some discussion, there was some reluctance to, people viewed it as giving, not giving up, but passing the buck. But that's not the case. What we're going to do is we're going to get this back, and we're going to look at it as a committee again and say, what are the best, what's the best course of, what's our recommended course of action? Or, here are the paths forward. But now and I'll say this, I don't think anyone knew. I don't think anyone knows right now. If I said, how much is it going to cost and what's the path forward? No one would be hard. No, there would be very few people who are hard, who could provide an answer as to the exact amount. Fiscally, no one could guess that right now.
Yeah.
It's just not, it's not something that's readily available. So, that's sort of how we got to where we are. And to be honest, we looked at it impartially as we want to give both sides of the argument a fair shake. The people who believe deregionalization is the answer, we want to be able to say, okay, here's the data. Here's, this is what you need to use to make your decision. And to go back to the people who are in favor of a regionalized school district and say, okay, here's the data. Both sides need to look at this and really consider how you want to proceed. I know Pembroke went through it, so it was part of the process, but there was we couldn't readily pull this all together. As you can see, we're going to get a 50-page document that outlines every possible scenario going forward. So
I guess my and you answered it, but my question was, so you need the study with the 20,000 to get the answers, because you couldn't get them all as a committee, because it's too time consuming to move forward. We're not going to just take this thing and shelve it because it was a knee-jerk reaction to us not liking what happened. We're
Right.
still trying to move this forward and let the people decide. We're not just going to shelve it.
absolutely, that is our intent. And that's why we moved it out of this committee, because now we can say, we can give this as a handout at town meeting and say, everyone who walks through the door at town meeting, we can say, here's the study. This is a third-party impartial source that gives you all the possible scenarios. So there will be a possible scenario to deregionalization in there. But it will give a price, it will give a steps, it will give the legal challenges. And I'm a big proponent of this, because I think it takes all impartiality out of it. Once we hand this out, this isn't coming from, the finance committee, this isn't coming from the selectmen, this isn't coming from the schools, this is coming from a third-party source who we're employing to gather the facts.
Perfect. Yeah,
No, I think that's such a great idea to do it that way.
The only question is, would it come at town meeting accompanying something, or just, as to, here's an article, here's what we're thinking about, and here's what everybody has, and read it before the article comes out? Or is this a, preview of coming attractions?
Well, I think what we loosely discussed was that I think the time frame for them to get this completed would take us past town meeting in May. It would bring it to October, where we either present it at the October town meeting, because I feel that that's the only way you can say we gave the information to everyone, because some people are gonna, if we put it up on the website or post it in town hall, someone will say, well, you didn't give me the opportunity, I only come to town meeting. So, we're probably not, we're not, if I had to guess a timeline, we're not looking at any action one way or the other, Mike, until town meeting of 2022, May of 2022, if I had to say. And even then it would require, the action could be no action. If the town at large read the report and view it as something that is just, okay, here are our options. Deregionalization is going to, cost. And if there's not a groundswell of support behind it, then, it could die right there. If there is a groundswell of support, we could see, an article in May of 2022, moving forward with deregionalization on some level. So I don't think there's a rush to get it done. Everyone wants to give it the due diligence it deserves for both sides of the argument.
Makes sense.
So that is the report, which brings us to the reserve fund transfer. So I have a reserve fund transfer from the town administrator for $19,500 to pay for the deregionalization study. The lowest responsive and responsible bidder was the Management Solutions. It was $19,000. It will come out of the reserve fund and be transferred to account number 01 TAC 122 TAC 5200 TAC 5310, which is the Selectmen Contractual Services line, and be used specifically for this purpose. Are there any questions?
On a general question, we haven't used the reserve fund to date yet for this fiscal year?
That's correct.
Have we?
We have not.
Make a motion to approve the reserve fund request for 19.5 as printed on the request as signed by town administrator.
A second.
All right, a motion has been made and seconded to approve the reserve fund transfer for $19,500 to pay for the Whitman Hanson Regional School deregionalization study. We will do a roll call vote. Mr. Dugan,
Aye.
Mr. McCormick,
Aye.
Mrs. Werdeman,
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan, aye. The reserve fund transfer request is approved 4-0. All right, thank you very much. That closes out the final main item I had on the agenda. I'll open the floor to any further discussion about the FY22 budget. If there's no burning questions right now, my thought was to look at scheduling another meeting next. Let me just verify next week.
Before you go, Kim, where are we with in-person meetings? Is town hall open yet?
No,
No.
town hall is still not open, and
Are we gonna do that at some particular point in our life? 'Cause
I tried to go up there the other day and was still shocked to find that the doors were locked and barred. And even when I called, all the answer, they all say, don't come up, don't come up. So I don't know where we are on the reopening. I will ask that question of the town administrator because, it is when we are in the budget like this, it is a lot easier to be able to sit face to face
Sure.
and go through the numbers, with everyone, with people's comfort level. I know people have different comfort levels, but I know for some of us, it helps to be in there with our abacus and going through the lines line by line. So I will ask that question of the town administrator. I've got to believe that we're getting closer to an opening. We keep, I feel like we're progressing through the phases. So
Yeah.
No.
I'm just asking.
Not that it's up to just me. I am not here next Tuesday, but I can, if it's any other Tuesday, I can.
yeah. So what I might do is I might just pencil it in for next Tuesday, and we'll do probably the fire department. We can backfill you on anything. I don't foresee anything major, but what I do want to do is I want to get a first pass through the town departments and give them an opportunity to discuss any outliers. I've had preliminary discussions with some of the town departments, and obviously the big question, as Chief Thompson brought up, is, where are we going to be in May? Where is this deficit going to be funded from?
Yeah.
But I like to give all the departments a chance to go through and explain, plead, not plead their case, but it's their opportunity to tell us what they feel is important and why we should, and it always happens that every year we'll go through it and we'll see something and say, oh, wait a minute, why did this go up, 15% year over year? And having the department head there to say, oh, it's because of X, Y, and Z. As Chief Thompson mentioned, he had a significant jump because he's got some people who hit the top step, or so it helps instead of shooting questions back and forth to the departments.
Oh yeah, no, definitely a good idea.
So, all right. Any further discussion, or that's all I had on my agenda for tonight?
Yeah.
I'm good.
I kept it under an hour.
Good job.
All right.
44 minutes, exactly. Nice work.
Let's make it 45 and make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Dugan has made a motion to adjourn.
Second,
There's seconded by Mr. McCormick. All those in favor, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Dugan,
Aye.
Mr. McCormick,
aye.
Mrs. Werdeman,
I
Mr. Sullivan, aye. We are adjourned for the night. Thank you very much, everyone.